social media and the addictive algorithms that really govern the platform is where our children spend so much of their lives. And what is so disturbing to me is that it really seems to be taking over their lives and governing their mental health as well. And I know there's a lot of parents on this call. I want to thank our great commissioner, Dr. Ann Sullivan, the Office of Mental Health, for what she is doing to champion this issue. But I think it's not a secret to anyone that I'm the first mom to be governor of New York. I'm also a fairly new grandmother. And, we all know that we really want our kids to be safe, protected, and we cannot fail them in this. And this is something where, a lot of times parents and teenagers disagree on things, but I'm really starting to see a change in the attitudes of the young people we've spoken to. This is something that teenagers and parents are agreeing on. And a lot of these young people know that they're feeling lonelier and isolated and anxiety and depression like they never have before. Perhaps even their older siblings might not have, because they are in this generational collide here where they're the first generation in 100 years to be dealing with the effects of a global pandemic, which created incredible isolation. It had to. They were on their own. They're at home. Their only social connections were through social media, but also then this rise in the addictive algorithms. And we really can see where there's a close connection between these influences and the onslaught of low self-esteem and desperation and depression and, social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And they just keep pulling our kids into this virtual darkness, and they need help. This is not from me. This is literally from them. And I cannot ignore the fact that I remember this voice so clearly when a young woman said, "You have to save us from ourselves. We need you to help us put this down," because the peer pressure is so powerful that they can't say, "Well, I know this is not good for me. I need to focus on my work during the school day. I'm going to be the one person in my class who doesn't engage." That is a death sentence for our kids. They cannot be that one person or the small group of people because of the incredible pressure. So we said enough is enough. Last October, I was joined by our Attorney General, Tish James, Senator Andrew Gennardis, and Assembly Member Nili Rozic, and parents. Many of you represent parents from across New York. And we announced that we had legislation that would prohibit minors from being exposed to addictive social media algorithms and dangerous feeds, and protect them from online entities collecting and making money off their personal data for a teenager, minor. So this is my top priority at the end of session, just a few days left. If we don't listen to them and give more power back to parents as well to be able to shut it all off at midnight till 6 a.m., our kids are sleep deprived. This affects their ability to be resilient to the stresses of the next day. They need their rest. If we as the elected adults and the adults who care deeply about them from all across New York, if we don't listen to their cries for help and see the damning data, then we have failed in one of our most important, but I would say instinctive responsibilities, our duties, which is to keep our children safe. So we've had a big overhaul of the mental health system since I became governor 2 years ago. Safeguarding kids is a centerpiece of that. $1 billion for mental health. And we've been expanding mental health for young people dealing with eating disorders, for example, and youth suicide prevention, $10 million. And what's so important to me is opening more school-based clinics, because I've been to them and I've talked to young people who say they never would have been able to get help, or an adult who understands, if it was left up to their parents to take time off their jobs during the school day, drive sometimes a great distance to find a provider, try to do this every week for a long time, it never would have happened. So this is the reality. You help the young people in school, starting whether it's in middle school or high school. And if we can identify and stop some of this negativity and these mental health challenges while they're young, we can save them from a lifetime of needing care. And that's what I want to do. So we're going to have over 1,200 around the state, these school-based clinics. Every child who wants to access help and their parents who want them to get help should have it. So with these bills, we're in the home stretch. We're building on that progress. We're treating these symptoms that cause so much distress as an outgrowth of this. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. I want to hear your voices and your experiences. And as you answer the question, I thank Kyle for being our moderator today, because I will do my job better from listening to the people like all of you who care so deeply, who have joined us here today. So let Kyle take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, and Kyle Belagapitsky from New York State PTA. And on behalf of the parents and families of our 2.6 million school children, we truly applaud your work on this critical issue. In our recent mental health survey for parents, families, and educators, respondents were asked which youth mental health issues were most important in facing our students today. And the results were alarming. 82.1% of respondents felt that social media was the most important health issue facing our students, and that's why we're here. So, Governor, today we have parents and parent advocates from around the state joining us to talk about this critical issue and how we can work together to really best support our children, and we're going to dig in for this next 45 minutes. This question is going to be first for Stephanie Stevens. She is president of the YWCAs of New York State and executive director of the YWCA of Westfield. Stephanie, you have 2 kids, and I know what that's like. What kind of concern do you have when it comes to keeping them safe on social media? And why do you feel this is such an important issue for protecting them in their mental health and well-being?
Come off mute there. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Governor Hochul, for having me. I am in your hometown here, Western New York. Nice and sunny today, so that's definitely good for our kids' mental health as well as the parents. So I sent this question out to some of my peers and colleagues and my family members, my own kids. My kids are older now, 18 and 24. So we've kind of been through every stage of the social media process between my kids, their friends, and now being able to look back and seeing, oh, this is what we could have done better. And, the first thing that comes to mind is, the rules and regulations us parents have, screen time should be this and put the phone in here and don't let them be on it. Well, then they go to their friend's house and they get on it. Then, they sneak a phone, they get on it. So what we really need to do, in my opinion, being a mother for 24 years, is educate our kids on and how to use it and what is right and what is wrong. And, the people that they're seeing on social media are not experts and they are not the end all be all. Now, some parents, you have to lead by example. You can't have your phone on in front of you. You can't always be on it. And I'm not saying that I'm the best role model for that, but I try to be present in the moment, set my phone down. When a family comes over, they laugh at me because a lot of times I put it in the cupboard. So I forget where it is. So then, after everyone leaves, I'm looking for my phone for a good half hour. Stuff like that. What I would like to really, really touch on that I think is the most important is keeping your kids active. Keeping them, whether it be in sports, whether it be in clubs, and you don't need to be around them all the time because they're not going to listen to your opinions. If you say social media is bad, get off of that phone, they're going to be no, I'm going to do what I want. But if you send them to somewhere like an after-school program, the YWCA Boys and Girls Club, and you get them involved in that stuff, and not because you have to, not because you're working and you need to send them there, but because it's a good space for them and it's a good place for them to find mentors on what they should and should not be doing. So you send them somewhere, they're playing basketball, they're being busy, they're running around, they're networking in person, meeting new friends, and they get some pretty good role models. They get teens that work in the program and that are helping, and they don't have their phones and they are talking about, oh, this TikToker, you don't want to listen to them, or things like that, and they're not on their phone. They're tired when they get home. Then when they get home, you give them a couple hours on their phone. Then you take it, you charge it in your room at night, and you give it back to them after school. And I think we're giving kids their privileges a little bit too early too. My daughter will tell you, I didn't let her have a phone until 13. I didn't or let her have social media, till she was 13. So, keeping our children young and innocent as long as we can, I think helps a lot too. So I think my take on all this, being a a mom of older children now, and being able to reflect back is keeping them busy. Put them in the programs. It doesn't mean that you're a bad mom because, oh, well, I'm home. Why am I sending my kids off? They need that. They need to be around other people, and they need to be active, and they need to be outside, and they need to be in the programs. So that's my take on that.
Stephanie, I really appreciated that comment, especially about the one about taking the phone at night. I think, as Governor mentioned, it's often children are on their phones in the evening hours and they're not getting sleep. So that was fantastic advice. I'm going to transition now to Kathleen Spence. She is a parent and educator who knows, unfortunately, the harms that toxic social media content can cause. Kathleen, you've spoken really powerfully about the impact that this has had on your daughter. If you're talking right now to a social media company executive about their addictive algorithms, what would you tell them? And what do you think they need to know, really, from one parent and educator to the company?
This is really an excellent question. My daughter and I were both present at the January 31st U.S. Senate online child safety hearing, and Mark Zuckerberg was strong-armed into telling us face-to-face, quote, "I'm sorry for everything that you have gone through." Well, I would like to tell him that his apology was fake and insincere. If he valued our most precious commodity, our future youth, then he wouldn't view them as a product of $270. My daughter's life and the children that I work with are worth more than $270 a piece. If Meta and other social media companies cared about our future generations, then they would turn off the dark algorithm that draws them into doom scrolling. They would turn off late night notification and stop the addictive nature of their platform. They would turn off notifications during school hours so that children can receive uninterrupted education. They need to give children and the users easier availability for safety options, such as the ability to easily turn off the algorithm and limit who can private message them. It shouldn't be a secret on finding these features. Most importantly, they need to start putting mental health of our future generation first. I would tell these companies to stop data collecting information on our youth and then selling it to third-party companies and turning our children and my daughter into a product. I challenge the CEOs of the big 5 companies to come spend 1 week in my middle school in New York to see firsthand how the social media is destroying the social and emotional well-being of our future. Most importantly, I want the big 5 CEOs to remember that our children are not going to be, they're in danger of their harmful algorithm. Here are just some of the names that have been lost as a result of their harmful algorithm. And I want them to know their names: England Roberts, Selena Rodriguez, Alexandra Neville, Mason Eden, Zachary Nazio, Tanner Jensen, Carson Bride, CJ Dawley, and Chase NASCAR. And those are just a few of the thousands of children in our country that have been lost at the hands of the algorithm of social media. Social media company needs to stop putting their profits and start putting children first. Enough is enough. We demand change now.
Kathleen, thank you for those very powerful words. From one mom to another, I know how important your voice is and your daughter's voice. So thank you for all the work that you do on behalf of families. We're going to transition now to talk to Scott. Scott is co-founder, Scott McLeod is co-founder of the Sophie Fund. Scott, you know firsthand the devastating impact of what can happen when a young person becomes too overwhelmed by the harmful forces around them. What do you think we should know about how to support and provide care to our youth who really need it most? Scott? And Scott, you're on mute, so if you could take yourself off mute, that would be fantastic. And Scott McLeod, thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, everybody here. We established the Sophie Fund after the suicide of our daughter, Sophie, who was a Cornell University student at the time. Our efforts are aimed at the local community in Tompkins County, state of New York, including the college campuses. We want to do everything we can to advance better mental health support for our young people. We also co-founded the Bullying Prevention Task Force in Tompkins County after the suicide death of one of our young students who had experienced severe bullying. One of the things this task force has done is given a lot of programming to the community, including parents and school staff, on cyberbullying. The national data on young people's mental health is alarming, and we see this in Tompkins County. We had a survey in 2023 of students grades 6 through 12. 35% said they felt sad or depressed on most days. It's just unbelievable. 34% said they sometimes felt that life wasn't worth it. At Cornell, student surveys have shown that depression, stress, or anxiety have prevented nearly half of undergraduates from functioning academically for at least a week during their school year. I think there's a lot more we can all be doing. In general, I would say there's a serious lack of resources. We really appreciate the governor's efforts in this regard. It's going to take everything we've got. Let me just focus on the opportunities for schools, which is an area we've done a lot of work with. It's important, I think, to recognize the need for systemic improvement. Schools must be more proactive. They must make supporting student mental health a priority. We need proactive work, not just crisis management. We need to encourage help-seeking behavior and not perpetuate stigma by discussing mental health in whispers. This means that schools need to honestly and proactively educate their school community about mental health, about suicide, about bullying, and that includes educating the students themselves, school staff, teachers, and especially the parents. This means meaningful programming for students and for parents. It means having open conversations collectively and individually with parents. And it also means training school staff and especially school psychologists and social workers in bullying prevention and in suicide prevention. I think the governor's initiative on training in mental health first aid is incredibly important. This is exactly what we need more of. Best practices exist, but we need schools to be following them.
And Scott, I know the work that you do to carry on Sophie's name is so powerful. During the pandemic, we saw, unfortunately, and post-pandemic, suicidal ideation of youth, as you know, unfortunately continue to increase, and it is a continuing concern. So thank you for the work that you do on behalf of your daughter and all of the work you do in Tompkins County. Governor, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. So far, we've heard from Stephanie, Kathleen, and Scott, all with really powerful stories, this critical voice, this parent voice on what's happening to our youth and social media. Do you have some initial thoughts?
No, this just simply reinforces that we're on the right path, that not just the parents and the voices we've heard already, and we'll hear in a couple more minutes, representing their life's experiences, but the thousands of families, millions of people out there across the country who are asking for some answer to this. They don't want to end up with a teenager who emerges into their 20s who's really not as healthy mentally as they would have been but for these influences. I mean, we want all of our children to be successful, put them on that path where there's no barriers to doing whatever they want to do. It's just hardwired in everyone as a parent to think like this. And then you see these forces that you can't control out there having this negative impact, and your once joyful child has emerged into a darker being who just wants to be alone in their room all the time. And, you know, if you drag them to the dinner table, they're sitting there going like this all through the dinner table. We lose them. We lose their souls. We have to bring them back. And so these voices thus far have already motivated me to just stay the course we're on, because I don't want to be judged by history later and say, you were the generation who saw the effects and you didn't do anything about it. I can't live with that. The people on this call can't live with this. And so I appreciate everybody lending their voice, and the media amplifying this is important to overcome the forces against what we're trying to do. And they are powerful, but there's nothing more powerful than a parent's nature, their intuitive nature to protect their children. That is what's going to prevail in the next couple of days here. So thank you.
And we agree, Governor. New York State PTA is from 1897 old. So we would agree with you. There's nothing more powerful than that parent voice. And I'm so glad to be here with these fantastic parents. We're going to transition to Bernice Tsai now, our colleague from Common Sense Media and a parent and advocate. Bernice, you've worked so hard as an advocate to counteract the dangers posed to kids these days by harmful digital content and Common Sense Media. What are you concerned about the fact that these companies are collecting and selling personal data of minors? What does that look like?
Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. And I just have to say, Governor Hochul, I'm so impressed with the research you've done and how much you know on this topic. It's great to know that you're an advocate for us. I'm the mom to a 15-year-old daughter, and I remember when my daughter got her first phone when she was 11. And she would say to me, oh, it's so boring when we get together with our friends. Everybody's just on their phones. I'd rather be playing games. I'd rather be doing stuff. And I thought to myself, oh, this is great. She knows that it's not healthy to be online all day. She'd rather be with her friends engaging. But I was naive because I didn't realize that she was up against big tech. And within less than a year, she became like her friends and many others in her generation. She basically became addicted and hypnotized by social media and began spending all of her time on her phone in her room in the dark, as you said. And why does this happen? This is why I'm worried about the data collection piece, because she quickly got converted because of the data that was being collected on her. The algorithms that are keeping our kids online, they run on fuel, and that fuel is our children's information. It's their data. It's information about every move they're making, everything that they look at, everything they like, their feelings, where they are every moment of the day, if their location services are on. And I read in a recent research study that by the time a child is 13, over 70 million pieces of data might have been already collected on them, which is outrageous. Tech companies are essentially stalking our kids. And for some reason, until now, we really haven't had the collective will to say, stop. That's not only wrong, but it's kind of sick. It's stalking, right? And to be honest, most kids don't really understand what's happening to them online. They have no clue that they're being followed and traced and tracked. If I can share a quick story, a few weeks ago, my daughter found out that a young man at her school who had a crush on her had sort of become a little obsessed and was sort of demonstrating his interest in her in some strange ways, including he had begun to secretly follow her home from school. So as you can imagine, our family became worried and we contacted the school. And within the hour, the principal, the head of security, the head of students were on a conference call with us, assuring us they were going to protect our daughter. They were going to talk to the young man, make sure he understood that following her without her consent, without her knowing, was inappropriate. It was not acceptable. It's not what we do in our society. And basically the adults rallied together quickly without hesitation to make sure my daughter was protected and that she wouldn't continue to be followed and monitored by someone that she didn't know or really want to have doing that. So imagine that. That's, this idea of a child being stalked or followed unknowingly is disturbing, right? It's not something that any of us would feel comfortable with, knowing that that was happening to our children. And yet that is actually what's happening every day to our kids online. Every hour, every move they're making is being tracked. And just because it's happening online and it's invisible, we've somehow normalized that it's okay. And it's really not. In the physical world, we would never allow that to happen. And so it's the same sort of situation. All of our kids, including my daughter, deserve to be protected by adults, not exploited, not have their data traded on so that others can make money and that data can be used to manipulate them, control them, make them feel bad about themselves, separate them from their families, from their friends, from the people who care about them, just so that someone at big tech can make a buck. It's really that disturbing that they're allowed to do that on the backs of our children. So as I know, you know, this data privacy bill hasn't been updated in 25 years. 25 years ago, the internet didn't exist, social media didn't exist, iPhones didn't exist. It's time to catch up and make sure that we're doing what we can to protect this next generation, because one generation has already been suffering and potentially lost. And we can't let that happen again. So I just want to thank you so much for being involved and being a champion for this.
Thank you.
Bernice, thank you for that powerful story. And it's very important to share these stories with everyone. And thank you for doing that today. Governor, how do these stories help shape these last 4 days of session, these last 5 days of session? We're really at the end of session at this point. And we have these very important social media bills to protect children. What does that look like for you?
Well, it's doing events like this, but also doing more roundtables and speaking out and trying to, bring the press attention in a positive way on what we're doing. I just did an NPR interview, for example, nationwide, and saying this really should be a national standard. That we'll fight hard in New York, but just like other issues where the federal government is not up to the task, and especially our Congress that doesn't seem to want to take actions to protect citizens in many areas. This is where state governors have to step up. So what I want to do is use the voices we're hearing here, let them continue to be amplified, and really try to get into the bloodstream of what people are talking about here in Albany. And I believe it's happening. This is the power of my bully pulpit, so to speak, that I can just be sustained and unrelenting in my pursuit to get this done, work with our legislative leaders. Our teams are in constant communication all day long on this issue, and hopefully come out with a result that we can be proud of and not succumb to the pressures that are very powerful. And so this is a moment where we have to stand up and be successful, and then say to other states, some of you have tried, you didn't get quite as far as us, or other states haven't attempted. This is the way you do it. New York is going to lead in this space, because there's nothing more important to us than our children and their health.
And we appreciate your leadership on this. I know you have a partner in all of us on this call. And we'll talk now to Dr. Misha Porter. She is president and CEO of the Bronx Community Foundation. Misha, you've dealt with a lot in your previous role as chancellor, as a mom, and in your new role at the Bronx Community Foundation. How are you addressing the issues surrounding the inequities in the Bronx? What problems have you encountered as it relates really to online education? And most importantly, certainly for us, parent engagement, that's so critical.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle and Governor Hochul, for this important conversation, and to all the champions for children on this call. I'm just honored to be in your presence. In addition to leading New York City public schools during a tremendously critical time when schools shut down in March of 2021, I was also the mom of a high school student, a freshman, a senior dance major in her last year of college, and a middle school teacher, who were all grappling with remote learning and the social disconnect from school. I had conversations with so many parents and students who talked about how much they struggled through remote learning. And watching students across the city grapple through the pandemic, I knew that one of the most important things that I could do, that we could do, was to ensure that we were positioning to safely reopen and bring our babies back to in-person learning. And for me, school is the center of community. And so centering resources at the building level to support our students' mental health is critically important. And I'm so glad to hear what you're doing, Governor. Now I'm leading the Bronx Community Foundation, the first and only community foundation in the Bronx, solely dedicated to delivering resources to the borough. Our work is to eradicate inequities and build sustainable futures for all Bronxites through grant making, convening, and focusing on strategic program partnerships in education and digital equity. The Bronx has the lowest broadband adoption rates of any borough, and the disparities are even more pronounced at the neighborhood level, with 38% of my neighbors not having access to broadband. What this tells me is that in the pandemic, there was a lack of access to high quality education, food, healthcare. We had the lowest PPP loans in the borough, and so on and so on. And because of this, we formed the Bronx Digital Equity Coalition to combat deep-rooted disparities in our community. In addition, the foundation has supported the launch of the Gigabit Center at the Andrew Friedman Home, which brings Wi-Fi device access and digital literacy programs to community members who struggle with digital access and literacy. Nearly 1 in 5 teens can't finish their homework because of the digital divide. And roughly 1/3 of households with children ages 6 to 17, whose annual incomes fall below $30,000 a year, don't have access to high-speed internet connections at home. And as it relates to parents, what we did see in the pandemic was actually an increase in parent engagement because there were multiple ways for working parents to connect to school. However, ensuring connectivity is critical to this continuing. So because of the lack of connectivity, students have become reliant on their phones. And so we have to solve for this. So in addition to the increase in school-based health clinics, which is so important, and I'm such a cheerleader for those school-based healthcare providers, we also need to create phone-free spaces in our schools and a program and partner to help facilitate this. Governor, it's already happening. In the Bronx at MS 180, at New Pathways Academy, and at the Bronx School for Law, Government, and Justice, they're using pouches to ensure that their students are talking to each other and not on the internet throughout the school day. And Governor, you're right. Our babies aren't offering up their phones, but they're definitely recognizing the difference it makes in their ability to learn and connect to each other when they don't have them. And I can't tell you the excitement that principals have about hearing student voices in the cafeteria. Yet, as we do this important work, we must also ensure that we don't leave the Bronx out and we close the digital divide that exists in our borough and provide schools with the appropriate tools to support 21st century learning, which is not about devices, but about access and innovation through the intersection of teachers, students, and 21st century tech tools working together to deepen human connections. We need to take a human-centered approach to technology, which prioritizes human needs and values. And I would say, Governor, you'd also appreciate my mom, who's also a teacher, who makes us put up our phones on Sundays at Sunday dinner, modeling the importance of our family and our family connections.
Dr. Porter, on behalf of those about 900,000 students in New York City, thank you for what you did for them during the pandemic. And thank you for what you do in the Bronx for parents and families and children. So I know we'll continue to work together. We're going to transition now to Julie Scelfo, who is founder and executive director of Mothers Against Media Addiction, such an important group. Julie, what stories are you hearing from mothers across your network? How are they struggling really with seeing their kids getting hooked on toxic algorithms? And what steps are they taking to speak out and make sure that we in government, those in government, can really act to protect them?
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you to the governor for convening us this morning. For those who don't know, Mothers Against Media Addiction, or MAMA, is a grassroots movement of parents fighting back against media addiction and creating a world in which real-life experiences and interactions remain at the heart of a healthy childhood. Every day, I hear from concerned parents about how their children are glued to their screens. As a mother of 3, this is something I've experienced firsthand. And having spent most of my career as a journalist, I'm motivated by facts, and the facts are clear. We are in a national emergency in youth and adolescent mental health, and we need to deal with the underlying causes now. Our kids' compulsion to check their phones is inhibiting their development, distracting them from learning in class, and limiting their opportunities for in-person interactions with their peers. Screen time isn't just harmful. It's eliminating critical interpersonal experiences during childhood and adolescence, a time when kids are supposed to interact, they're supposed to learn how to conduct themselves, and they're supposed to have plenty of time for play and all the embodied learning that comes with it. Now we have this unprecedented youth mental health crisis. It's wreaking havoc on our kids, it's devastating families, and it's being fueled by these harmful and addictive algorithms and content that young people are seeing on social media every day. According to the U.S. Surgeon General, most adolescents are spending more than 3.5 hours daily on social media, a level that puts them at much greater risk of experiencing poor mental health outcomes. Their behavior is dangerous, and it's not safe to let them continue. Our MAMA network has been at the forefront of urging our elected leaders to enact basic safeguards, such as the bills in the New York legislature that's being considered right now, and we hope they pass this week, to protect our kids from the harms of social media. We've been rallying in Albany and in New York City, including a rally outside of Meta's Manhattan offices, calling for policies to ensure that kids have online privacy protections and to prevent social media companies from targeting them with hidden algorithms that exploit their emotions for profit. For any parents, teachers, or other concerned adults who want to get involved in this effort, please go to joinmama.org to become part of our movement. Together with the work being done by Governor Hochul and others and everyone in this call, we can create a future where all kids experience a healthy, balanced childhood in a world where technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
Julie, thank you. I know there's a lot of mothers on this Zoom, so we appreciate all of the work that you do. We're going to transition now to Jenny Dembro, who's the executive director and co-founder of the Lower East Side Girls Club. Jenny, you work closely with teen girls in a wide variety of programming. I know this is a group that really has been hit hard by harmful effects of social media. What are you hearing from teen girls about the way that social media content is impacting the feelings of self-worth? And how are you addressing this at your girls club?
I will get into that. But first off, I just wanted to say, Governor Hochul, it's great to see you again. It feels like a lifetime ago that you hosted The Future is Female, Making a Difference in Our Communities and in Congress in 2018 at the Girls Club. And in April 2020, at the height of the pandemic, you visited our New Girl City cohort via Zoom. We are so grateful that you are not only amplifying this issue, but providing critical funding to address mental health issues amongst youth. I'm honored to be with you all today. I've been with the Girls Club since our founding in 1996, and I can clearly delineate before social media and after the harmful effects on our members and the toll it is taking on their mental health. Remember when you were a kid and bullying happened in school? Now it can be 24/7 with people who have never even met you. Between COVID isolation and social media, we have witnessed young people retreating and wanting to disconnect from the real world. In my 28 years working at a youth-serving organization, I have never experienced the level of mental health issues we are seeing today. But there is hope. Girls Club provides a space filled with love, attention, and care, a space to create and build on face-to-face relationships where our addictive devices are put away. Social connectedness is the antidote to isolation. Girls Club offers mentors, nourishment, rest, someone to listen to you. Members experience a sense of belonging, strengthen social skills, build supportive peer groups, and engage with staff and mentors who encourage, challenge, and care for them. We listen to our youth. They feel seen and heard. Mental well-being is woven through every one of our programs. We have a phenomenal social worker who provides direct support to members and their families, and it's not just counseling that we offer. We have teen and preteen restorative circles where members share experiences and receive support. Members practice self-care and develop habits for a lifelong health. Passion and joy. Our members thrive as they explore interests, discover and pursue their creative passions, choosing from over 40 weekly programs in the arts, media, music, dance, STEM, design, civic engagement, gardening, wellness, and more. Young people need hope and the ability to envision a brighter future for themselves and their community like we all do. That is what we do at the Lower East Side Girls Club. It's a space to turn off the devices and connect in real life. As one of our members expressed last year, we are a light of hope for young people. And thank you so much.
Jenny, thanks for the important work that you do on behalf of all of mothers of teen children. It's fantastic. Governor, we've heard a lot about especially the impact on teens and teen girls in particular the last few speakers. How does that impact, your decision on moving forward on this legislation?
Well, it's continuing to motivate me, that's for sure. There's no way we're going to throw in the towel when I hear the voices on this call. I mean, there's people relying on us. And I was also interested in what Dr. Porter was talking about this digital divide, which is deeply concerning to me, that there should be, laptops, iPads in schools, so young people don't have to think that their only way to have this connection is through their own smartphone. I have thrown out an idea. It's not fully developed, but this comes from sitting with young people. Like, what would a school day be like where the young people didn't have this distraction going on all day long, and they're actually looking eye to eye with other students at lunchtime or listening to the teacher directly instead of having their head down? And I'm going to be pursuing this. I want to get this done first. I want to talk to more parents and educators about concerns about smartphones. Do they need to be in schools? If you need to have a connection because of, we all have that terrible image of a school shooting and wanting to be able to connect and make sure your child's okay. I understand that, but flip phones do that too. It doesn't have to be hooked up to a smartphone, which then opens up the entire world of distraction. It allows you to have what parents want is that ability to reach you, and you can set that aside. And that's not going to be luring you in all day long when you have to be focusing on your studies. That's the purpose of school and socialization in person. So I'm just inspired by these stories, and I would say it's very motivating for me. And I know who's counting on us to do the right thing here.
Yeah, we agree, Governor. And I know the next speaker, who happens to be a clinical licensed social worker, is going to have a unique perspective. Erin Muller is founder of Modify Wellness. You help individuals and families who are really struggling to overcome obstacles in their lives. In your work with clients, what connections have you seen between the distractions of social media and mental health symptoms like depression and anxiety? Because we saw that too in our mental health survey, particularly among young people. What does that look like, Erin?
Yes, thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Governor Hochul, for this very critical conversation. So as a therapist, I have noticed significant connections between social media use and mental health among our youth. Depression and anxiety, especially, has grown tremendously. Social media often creates a platform for constant comparison, leading to feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem. The curated and often idealized portrayals of other people's lives can make users feel as if they're not really matching up. Additionally, the pervasive nature of social media can contribute to poor academic performance, sleep disturbances, and contribute to anxiety. The pressure to feel constantly available and responsive can lead to stress and a sense of overwhelm. The fear of missing out also plays a critical role, exacerbating anxieties as individuals feel compelled to stay engaged and keep up with their peers. Moreover, cyberbullying and negative interactions online can lead to increased feelings of isolation, increased suicide rates, and depression. The anonymity of social media can sometimes embolden negative behavior that individuals may not exhibit in face-to-face interactions. While social media has some positive aspects, such as fostering connections, providing support, there are the negative effects that's affecting our youth's mental health, particularly amongst our school age and adolescents. Significant attention is needed in policy, management strategies, empowering our parents who may not be aware, which would benefit them through a robust campaign so they can understand the dangers of social media to their parents. A lot of parents are not aware of what's happening because they're busy with work, busy with their own lives, just trying to navigate and get through. So thank you so much, Governor Hochul, for this conversation. And yes, that's it.
Erin, thank you for that important perspective. I know Elise Gold, who's founder of the Maya Gold Foundation, is going to speak next. Elise, you launched your foundation to honor Maya's memory and bring more attention to the social pressures young people face that Erin was just discussing. In your work with the foundation, what have you heard from other teens and families of teens who are struggling with youth mental health? And what can, those in government and us stakeholders do to really help them?
Again, thank you both, Kyle, Governor, and it is also an honor, and I'm so inspired to sit side by side all of you who are doing such good work throughout the state. We have heard so much from the teens that we work with. We do not do any work without them there. In fact, the first question I had when I was invited is, can I bring a teen? We hear a lot when many of them have suffered through mental health challenges and crises. Many of them feel gifted and blessed enough that they have the supports they need. And many of them also recognize that the supports are not there for so many. And there is so much stigma that people don't talk about it. I'm going to address 3 issues when it comes to what can the government do to support. And one of them, Governor Hochul, you hit straight on. school-based clinics. Bravo to you to be naming that and recognizing that. School social workers and guidance counselors have their hands full with, directing kids to college or figuring out schedules. They're not often there. There's not enough resources for the mental health needs. So to bring in clinics, we have learned has been effective. So if there's any way that the government can find good therapists, because that's also a key, to be in the schools where it can be made more affordable. As another mentioned, that parents often don't have time or means to take their kids to clinics or therapists outside of the school hours. That would be brilliant. 2, education. Helping to break the stigma. I know, Scott, you mentioned youth mental health first aid. We, the My Goal Foundation, are big proponents of both youth mental health first aid and teen mental health first aid. Teen mental health first aid, both of these are managed by the National Council of Mental Wellbeing, evidence-based programs. In the case of teen mental health first aid, teens often, of course, we were all teens, listen to teens more so than adults. So we give teens the tools to recognize when they themselves or others are experiencing mental health challenges or crisis, not only recognizing it, but then what to do, like first aid. Stop the bleeding while calling the ambulance. I don't do the stitching up. Let the experts do that. So when it comes to experts, to be sure to have, for every teen, for every youth, to have a trusted, compassionate adult that they can turn to in their life, that's a very strong protective factor in the life of an adolescent. And third, so teen mental health first aid would be for the teens themselves. Youth mental health first aid is for adults who are working with youth, so they can learn signs, signals, symptoms, and what to do. Because we all see it, but yeah. And last is access. We know, of course, there's always a need for more services, but here in the Hudson Valley, for instance, Ulster County is where I'm based, there's wonderful resources, thank goodness, but teens don't know how to access it. If they're in crisis or facing a challenge, how do they, go through the myriads of websites and services out there? What does half of this stuff even mean to the teens? So if there were a simple place to put on the phone, click a QR code and then put in your, what's your problem? Or whether it's substance use or teen dating violence or self-harm or suicidal thoughts, just to really hone in, make it, yes, resources are out there, but make it accessible without having to do scrolling. If you're in a crisis, that's not going to be the time to start research. So those are my 3 takeaways: education, resources, and easier access. And I just say bravo to the good work that you are doing and that we all are doing. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Thanks, Lee.
Elise, those are fantastic points, especially the youth mental health first aid. I know our entire governance team is actually taking the Mahaney's course right now because it's really important. So I suggest everyone who's watching at home to check out a local youth mental health first aid class. You can take it online or in person. Really, really critical. And I'll say lastly, but certainly not least on our panel this morning is Dr. Susan Fox, who is founder of the Park Slope Parents. Susan, you're a parent and you also work closely with other families in your community. Why do you think it's so important for parents and families to stay connected to discuss the youth mental health crisis and social media's role in it?
Thank you for your attention to this important issue. The other folks on this panel have discussed so many of the important issues. I'm going to focus on the community side. As someone who leads a community of over 7,000 families, I've seen the power that parents have if we join together. We absolutely need to discuss the youth mental health crisis and social media's role in it. But we have to be mindful about how to protect our youth and reverse this tide of smartphone use, because the ball's already rolling. Legislation is a great step toward making this happen. More importantly, though, I think we need to band together to normalize not having phones and limiting access to social media so young. Passing legislation, like I said, will help. And as Governor Hochul said, we can help save kids from themselves. We have to set norms within our kids' friends groups, as well as the larger community, such as delaying when we let kids get smartphones and social media. We know that middle schoolers' sense of themselves is in flux and influenced by what other people, especially their peers, think and say. And these formative years are so important. So if we decide as one parent in a sea of parents who allow smartphones to not give our child a smartphone, that's not the way to go. Parents banding together will prevent also this idea of othering kids who don't have social media. No one wants to feel left out, and not having social media or missing the latest TikTok trends during this awkward time can lead to FOMO, as Erin said. My own two kids, who are 20 and 22 now, they didn't get social media until later, until after 8th grade. And I was talking to my daughter, and she said, I felt like I was missing out on things. I felt like, as we all did, if we weren't allowed to watch SpongeBob SquarePants, or we didn't know who shot JR. So when we talk to parents, so when you talk to the parents of your kids' friends and jointly decide to limit their social media use, that fear of missing out doesn't happen as much, because everybody's on the same playing field, as Bernice said earlier. If all your friends are doing it and you're not, you feel the need to catch up. We also need to band together to let schools know that we as parents are okay not having our kids have their phones during the school day. And Governor Hochul, I applaud this. When you think about it, we absolutely don't need to be in touch with our kids every single moment of the day. And parents need to know, and this is a little nod to the Let Grow Project, parents need to know that their kids are safer out in society right now than any other time in history. And giving their kids the freedom out in the world is this wonderful thing. So if we're gonna limit smartphones and social media, we have to replace it with something else. And that something else needs to be less structured, more independent, and free play. These smartphones are passive instruments. They entertain us. We need to bring back old-fashioned opportunities to play outside, run errands, walk to school. We need kids. What kids need is an appreciation for their capacity to change and cope with whatever life throws at them. And big tech is hurting their ability to do that. Other parents need to band together to support the decision to let their kids play outside, to not have phones, and not shame or criminalize parents, giving kids real world independence. And I'll end with this quote that John Haidt says from Let Grow. He says, if parents don't replace screen time with real world experiences involving friends and independent activity, banning phones, limiting social media will feel like deprivation, not opening up a world of experience. Thanks, Governor Hochul, for seeing this as such an important issue to address.
And Dr. Fox, I think that was a fantastic way to close this wonderful panel. There was lots of cheers for some of your comments. I don't know if you saw. And to all of our panelists, thank you so much for your time and really expertise and work in this area. I know the governor and all of the legislature and many of the parent advocates are going to be calling on you over the next few days and few months to try to get this work done to continue to support our students. I'm going to toss things back to you, Governor, to close and continue to thank you for the work that you're doing to support kids, raise awareness, and make every child's potential a reality. Governor?
Well, thank you, Kyle. You did a great job of getting out of each person their perspectives and their sometimes life experience that help continue this debate and allow me as the governor to process what I've heard today, layer that on top of the information I already had, and just march on forward. And we don't want any more young people to be suffering and struggling, and parents so uncertain about how to pull their child back from the abyss. there's nothing more paralyzing for a parent than to say, I don't know how to help my child. And we have to stop that. It didn't happen when my kids were much younger. There was MySpace, and it wasn't these addictive algorithms. And now they're, adults themselves. And I'm glad I got through that. But I've got a grandchild who's going to be coming up through that. So we don't have to have every parent in fear of this world, which was not there when they were growing up. And I do so miss seeing young people get out there and just making up their own activities and playing and kicking a ball in the backyard or tossing balls or, just going to the movies, go hang out at the mall together in person with somebody. I mean, what happened to that? So we can get back to that because we're the first generation of parents to see the effects of social media in a profound way. We're the first ones who are calling it out. We're the first ones who are saying, we will do something about it. So I want everybody to be even more motivated in touching your networks to bring to bear the support we need. We have a lot of support here in Albany, but we just have to get through the next few days, work it out, and then let the process play out and then go on for the next challenge. And I'm fascinated to keep hearing the word FOMO because that's something I learned from my teenagers at the time. Like, FOMO sounds dreadful. What is it? It's like you're missing out. And I listening to these young people in all these forums over the last year, they desperately don't want to be ostracized and be the person who didn't know something or something. One young woman said, they're saying bad things about me today. I need to know about it so I can walk past that person in the hallway. I mean, it was sad to know that their world revolved around what was happening on their smartphones and not what was happening in the school environment around them or outside of school. So we're motivated. We're ready to march on. And I want to rely on this particular group in an advisory capacity as we talk about the whole concept of smartphones in schools. I want to talk about this. I want to hear what's on your minds, the upsides, the downsides, and how we can process that going into the next session as well. So thank you. Every generation has its challenges, but I see leaders and caring individuals, and particularly the parents, who want to do something and meet the moment of today. So thank you, everyone.